It's 6:34, very nearly. This is breakfast. Good morning to you.
Now, there is a great picture on the front of the Daily Mail this morning. It's a look that says, I've just lost a lot of money again.
Yeah, see if we can show it, shall we? There
Yeah,
you go.
here we
Look
go.
at that, Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk. He's just lost £2.5 billion
That rocket
on
going
that
up.
rocket. Yeah, it went up and it very quickly came back down, didn't it? A rapid, unscheduled disassembly.
Yes, that's the official.
That's
yes,
the official.
for blowing up.
Yeah.
The Sun has got a lot on Paul O'Grady this morning. For the love of Paul is the headline. Inside, actually, there's a double-page spread. Fans lining the streets to catch a glimpse of the funeral procession yesterday. And loads of dogs.
And loads of... It was lovely, wasn't it, really, the pictures of that. And The Guardian, it splashes with the defiant-looking Dominic Raab outside number 10. That's the Justice Secretary's career. It hangs in the balance this morning as the Prime Minister decides his fate.
Oh, and then a bit of delight in an Indian restaurant. Who doesn't like going out for an Indian?
A Ruby Murray.
Oh, I love a curry.
Me too.
Love a curry. The Prince of Wales has delighted staff at an Indian restaurant during a visit to Birmingham as he accepted a customer's phone booking.
Now, do you think
What's that all about?
Someone rang up to book a table and he answered, hello, and took the booking. But do you think he
Quite
said, this is
William.
This is William here?
I don't know. It's quite cool, though.
Imagine
isn't
being
it?
that customer.
That is quite cool.
customer.
I tell you what, Birmingham, I do love a curry. Wherever you go, you can get decent curries. But in Birmingham, go for a Balti.
Oh,
Now that,
yeah.
I did that when I was a student and I used to go over to Birmingham because I was in Nottingham. I used to go over to Birmingham, get a Balti, a big table naan and all that stuff. Just the best food.
Do you know what? Funny you say that. I had a curry in Birmingham. I think it was called Balti Bazaar. If that still exists, let me know. Wow. I think about it often.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to beat it. Not since. Not ever. I've even been to India.
And
tried curries there, and it wasn't the same as the Balti.
And that's impressive because you talk about and think about food a lot.
An awful lot. But honestly, I'm telling you, the best curry I've ever had was in Birmingham.
What was it called?
I think it was Balti Bazaar. I might be wrong.
Balti
Bazaar. If you're from Birmingham, let me know if that's the thing. But it was amazing. The best curry ever. And it was so cheap as well. It was like £6 for a meal.
Fabulous. Love it.
Anyway, the best.
Right, political commentator Benedict Spence is here with journalist Nabila Ramdani. Good morning, you two. Benedict,
morning.
let's kick off with the Telegraph, should we? It's quite a striking headline. Raab will fight to the death to keep his job. That might be a little over-egging the pudding.
I was going to say, just displaying the sort of aggression that I'm sure he's denying using whilst in office against the allegations. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. This is allies of the deputy PM saying that the fact that Rishi Sunak hasn't come out yet with his findings, it's not a clear opening shut case, shows that there are perhaps several layers to this story that will come out in due course. And the thing to remember about all of this is that there are many possible reasons why it's taking a bit of time. I know that you've touched upon a few of them earlier on, but you know, it's the very fact that it's citing allies of the Deputy Prime Minister shows, what we're talking about here. The Prime Minister doesn't actually have that large a majority. He doesn't actually have that much support, relatively. He lost out the first time round that there was an election for him to become Prime Minister. He's not the most popular.
Well, he did, but not because of the MPs.
He lost, true, but he doesn't have as much support as you might think. You always need to remember with Tory party politics, there's a lot of backstabbing, there's a lot of ambition, even whilst the government is on the ropes and you think they all need to come together. It's actually very difficult to get Tory MPs to agree on lots of things. He needs his key allies in place to offer him that support. That's why they're there, by and large, not necessarily because they're brilliant at their job.
Yeah, but
it's
a hide into nothing if he holds on to Dominic Raab in the wake of a damaging report.
Well, we don't know how damaging, and that's the thing. He's weighing up.
If he's not absolutely crystal clean on this one, then that's bad news for the PM.
This is a man whose job it is to take over as Prime Minister in case something happens to the Prime Minister. He's in charge of many different decisions, some of which are quite difficult. And the question that Rishi Sunak has to make is it worth getting rid of a key political ally and a very senior politician in a government over what are potentially allegations that could get you into trouble at, say, a top company or somewhere else in the public sector. But at the top of government, where it's a high-pressure environment, perhaps there needs to be some understanding that there is more give and take when it comes to behaviour. I know that won't sound good, doesn't sound very popular, optics and all that, but ultimately that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the running of the country, not an HR department somewhere about how people feel. And there will be the attitude from a lot of other Tory MPs, it must be said, if they perceive it that Dominic Raab is being hounded slightly for what they would consider just robust behaviour, that they might not be particularly happy, or other ministers in their positions might feel vulnerable to allegations of bullying themselves. That's what he's got to weigh up. He's got to weigh up sort of the pros and cons of saying, okay, he might have actually bullied somebody, but equally, he can't be seen to be getting rid of. This would be a third senior minister to have got rid of. And he's not really, I don't think he's been in the job even for a year yet.
One of the indications that the situation is not clear-cut is Rishi Sunak's decision to, he's effectively agonizing over whether to keep Dominic Raab or not, and he clearly needs more time to review all these allegations. So, he's received a very lengthy report from Adam Tolley. I was going to say QC, but it's Casey now.
Yeah.
And so he's still undecided whether to keep him or not. But I have to say the whole thing is presented in a very strange way, and you've got very different opinions about Dominic Raab presented. But it already you have critics calling for an independent judge to make a decision. They see...
How hard can it be?
Yeah, because I think it's because there's still a lot of anger over the former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who was clearly caught in a clear breach of the ministerial code, and Suella Braverman, who was also, caught in, she behaved in she had serious disciplinary issues, and yet she survived. So if Dominic Raab does survive as well, then you can see the critics coming, and saying, well, the whole system needs to be reviewed because this is unsustainable.
And also we could see if Dominic Raab is kept in post, is these civil servants are still in the department, these civil servants who've made these complaints, and if they feel like it's a whitewash, we could see mass resignations of civil servants now.
But I think one of the problems that Dominic Raab has is we live in an age where, all sorts of allegations can lead to very serious consequences. How much of these allegations are very serious psychological abuse or indeed violence, psychological violence, or how much is it huffing and puffing to get things done? So that's, a lot of things to be considered there. But as, as we were saying, it's government should be run in a different way than HR departments. And it's all almost the culture that's coming from America, where you see it in employment tribunals, where all sorts of actions or words can lead to huge settlements being paid. Now bosses request to have witnesses to speak to members of staff, and it can, it's that kind of culture that Dominic Raab is being caught up in, dare I say.
Okay, let's have a look at the Mail, Nabila. There is concern that the illegal immigration bill, which obviously is a key part of the government's strategy and what Rishi Sunak wants to achieve, could be blocked by the House of Lords.
Yes, that's a very strong front page in the Mail. An elected Lords plot to block the Rwanda flight law, and peers are poised to scupper a vital bill that would stop judges halting deportations. So I think this story effectively sums up the eternal battle between the House of Lords and indeed the House of Commons. It's in the end the job of the House of Lords to keep elected politicians in check. And the Lords, they see themselves as a watchdog of the Constitution, and this often puts them in conflict with elected MPs. Now, where this is crucial for the government, it's because Rishi Sunak, he's clearly supporting his Home Secretary. He wants his showpiece legislation to, his bill to go through. And this is all part of, of a strategy to win back voters. And what a better way to do this than finally dealing with a contentious issue, which is illegal immigration.
Look, this would be problematic if the Lords block it. But there's always a Parliament Act, Benedict.
I think a lot of this is sort of for show.
Because that
but
would
equally-
bypass.
Exactly, it is for show, but it is also, I think, because Rishi Sunak is acutely aware of the lack of time that he has. This would not necessarily prevent him from being able to pass legislation, but it could slow it down. And given that he's already pledged to sort of stop the boats, I wasn't sure if he pledged to do it by the end of the year. I think he tried to row back on that later, but nonetheless, he has made that part of the, one of the cornerstones of his premiership is that he will address this. And if you have it being bogged down in the Lords, as well as the legal challenges that it will almost certainly face, and quite apart from the fact that it is a very contentious issue, it means that we're already towards the end of April, you're creeping into the middle of the year, and no progress has necessarily been made in this. And of course, the legislation needs to be passed before he can then take action, by which point you will have already had many thousands of people already coming across the channel. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a sort of a PR game. It's sort of a bit of a threat to the Lord, saying, don't test us on this. We're prepared to, fight you on it, because he knows that he will get pushback. But it is all, of course, because he doesn't have the best polling ratings. We don't have that long until the end of the year, and that will signal the start of the next election cycle. At which point, people will start to look at his record, and the question will be: was he decisive, or was he bogged down by special interests elsewhere?
But the thing is, the Lords are not the only challenge to this immigration bill, because we have seen the European Court of Human Rights also weighing in, and a lot of people think that the measures of the illegal immigration bill are actually illegal themselves, and they are bound to fail if the European Court weighs in. So a bill which is meant to deal with illegal immigration is deemed illegal itself by a European court. And remember that Britain leaving the EU doesn't mean that the European Court of Human Rights doesn't have jurisdiction in Britain anymore. It still does.
No, but we could ignore it.
Yes, but it's hard to ignore when a case is presented about human rights and protecting, making some of the immigrants have very valid cases. But I think the problem is that the debate is all bundled up with illegal immigrants, as opposed to people who have rights to come in. But in any case, Rishi Sunak wants to present himself, as Benedict says, as the man who will be able to stop the small boats coming in. But the reality is, thousands of people are still coming in, even though it's less reported. I've been covering this kind of story from the so-called jungle in Calais. It's been going for decades. The jungle has been dismantled in 2016, but these stories about illegal immigrants coming have been going for 20 years, and yet the Tories will still be perceived as the party who failed to stop them.
Well, now it's the sophistication of the human trafficking gangs, isn't it? It's just something that just evolves over time, it seems, very sadly. Benedict, let's go to you, shall we, in that story in the Times about sleeping pills warding off Alzheimer's.
Yes, so it's a drug called suvorexant, which is used to treat insomnia, and that's been found to reduce by 10 to 20% the build-up of certain plaques in the brain that are a key cause of Alzheimer's disease. And I think that it is very interesting, because very often, actually, a lot of progress in medicine is through sort of trial and error with drugs that already exist and then are found to have sort of knock-on effects for other things. And it's curious because we've made a lot of progress in things like cancer, things like heart disease in the last few years. We haven't cured these things, but we have definitely made progress. Alzheimer's, dementia, it's the big thing, actually, that's sort of hanging over a lot of people, is that as we get older, more people become more prone to developing it. And of course, it's not a quick killer. It's a very slow, very traumatic, debilitating thing, and it costs a lot of money.
So this is a specific sleeping pill, not your...
This is
sleeping aid.
Yeah, this is the one that has been used in this trial in the US, and it's already been approved across the world for insomnia, and it's been found to have this effect. Now, that's not to say that it cures Alzheimer's. It simply stops the build-up of plaques, but it is the start, perhaps, of a process to finding a cure. Yeah, there are lots of things that actually are linked to it. People say fasting can help. People say, there are lots of different things that could potentially help you not develop it. We're not at a stage yet where we have a cure, but given how much it costs to keep people with Alzheimer's, let alone treat them, I think this has to be sort of the next big frontier
it's gonna help.
in medicine.
It's got to help, but don't go popping those sleep aids over the counter. I tell you what, they make me feel so drowsy for 24 hours. get a good sleep, but I'm like a zombie.
Might stop you getting Alzheimer's, but if you're asleep for half the day, actually, what's the
point?
benefit?
Yeah, exactly.
Benedict and Billy, we've got to leave it there. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you
very
very
much
much
indeed.